Hello, welcome back to FPL IQ. I'm FPL Rob, and today I'm joined with Teacher FPL once again, Lucian. And today we are looking at newly promoted side Luton Town, and it's not going to be a nice, shiny, positive video, I think, today, because people might know my opinion on newly promoted sides as it is, and this one is going to have a few weak points to discuss. And we'll start with the predicted lineup and formation with play styles, strengths and weaknesses, and players to potentially pick or avoid. But before we get into that, Lucian, how you doing? How you feeling about this Luton side?
I'm a bit heartened by the fact that they are coached by an ex-Wolves player in Rob Edwards. I think, especially with the weakest promoted side in the division, we are looking at how to take advantage of punishing them, how to go against them, how they behave away from home, and most importantly, when we choose players to play against them. That is really the lesson of this video. So let's go.
Looking at the lineup, it looks like it's going to be that sort of situation where it's like a 3-5-2 that on the defense will look more like a 5-3-2. Here is where a major point is going to be an issue, where there are a lot of sort of question marks with this side, and that is down to how many loan players used to be in their first 11. So there were 3 players in the side in key positions. I mean, every position you argue is key, but we're talking about key positions of this side. And starting in goal, we already start with a goalkeeper who was on loan, and that was Horvath last season. So Shea's in there at the moment, but that they're looking like they could be signing Tom Heaton from Manchester United. I don't know if necessarily that's a great move. Yes, he's got experience. Ben Foster, being an elder goalkeeper with Premier League experience, has sort of done the rounds with lower league table clubs before. That's who's in goal. Osho, Lockyer, and 4 million Bell at the back. He's the key one for this side. A lot of people have talked about because he's a 4 million starting defender. Then we're going to the midfield, and again, this is where we get a little bit tricky. The right wing back / right midfielder was Drama, who was on loan. He's gone. So in the side, we've got Onyedima, we've got Mpanzu, we've got Campbell, we've got Clark, and we've got Doherty. Another issue is in the middle, we've got Campbell, Clark, and Mpanzu, but Marvelous Nakamba was a huge key player, especially in the second half of the season last season, and he was on loan as well. So you've got your key defensive central anchor man in the middle, and you've got one of your attacking fullbacks who is key to this kind of formation and the role that the right wing back and the left wing back provide, and the goalkeeper all on loan. One of the more solid positions that they have, I think, in this Luton side is Adebayo and Morris up front. Now, they seem like they are the sort of more obvious, clear-cut choices up front. This is what the lineup is looking like. When we go on to the weaknesses, a key point is going to be the fact that 3 of these guys were on loan in the starting 11. So, and we've not really heard of big transfers coming in. I mentioned Tom Heaton potentially as goalkeeper. That's not exactly screaming we're staying in the Premier League. This might just be a situation where they're going to be sensible, they're going to be honest, they're going to be smart. If they can stay in the Premier League and sign a couple of players, great. But then they're not at that club level where they're going to throw tens of millions of pounds on players with the money that they've got. They'd rather have a go at the Premier League and try and stay up. Of course they're going to try and stay up. They're not going to put themselves in a financial situation where they come up with a small, very small budget, which I'll talk about later, a very small budget, a small amount of money, throw everything they've got at it, and then get relegated and lose that chance. This opportunity to be in the Premier League can financially keep them stable for years to come if they're smart about it. So Luton fans would, if you would have told these guys, they've come from non-league in the last sort of 10, 15 years. If you'd have told these guys, we'll give you 1 season in the Premier League, but you'll probably go down, they'll take it, right? They'll absolutely love that experience to just be in the Premier League. I think that's what's going to happen. I think this is one of the lowest, weakest sides to be in the Premier League. But how are you feeling about this starting 11?
Well, what they've got going for them is that they at least have an identity. So the 3-5-2 is systematic in the sense that their pressing triggers are obvious, their strategy is obvious in terms of winning the ball back, and It really just comes down to what type of games that they choose to win. Because with Luton, I mean, you just put yourself in their shoes, right? And you have to take this one game at a time. And you need to decide how you are going to beat tougher opposition. You're going to need to decide how you're going to beat slightly tougher opposition. And I think you're looking at 40 points. And they have to count their wins, perhaps utilize their home advantage a little bit, because their style of play, especially defensively, will rely on the home crowd to really get them going, especially if they concede perhaps an early big chance. We're really looking at which side is more effective in that sense. You mentioned a lot of players have gone missing on the right, which means that their left side is still functioning, and perhaps they will rely on that in the opening stages. So let's go straight into it.
Yeah, so we'll start with the strengths, and from an FPL point of view, I've already mentioned it. It's Bell. He's going to be a starter in this side in the defense. He's 4 million. A lot of us are going 3-5-2. So if you want a 4.5 million rotation option, and you want a second or third bench for the cheapest possible price with the most starts, he's going to be your man. You know, if you just need a warm body for your FPL side for the cheapest possible price, it's going to be Bell. Another thing, that's basically it from an FPL point of view. That's the only positive I'm gonna take from this side. In terms of the team themselves, you've mentioned it before. It's not just men behind the ball; they are a high pressing side, and wing backs are key. So you've seen that the left side is still functioning, but they do really use that width and use those wing backs. It is a big shame for them, obviously, that the right wing back has gone. So they're going to have to replace that with equal or better quality for this formation and this style to still work. So you're right, as long as the left side's still working. But look, if you're a Premier League team and you're saying, well, the right back, the right wing back, or the right midfielder, depending on the attacking or defensive phase, is easy to deal with. Let's just really focus on their left side where they're going to attack. It's going to be even easier to nullify. But yeah, just about this side, they will get wide. They will use those wing backs bombing up and down the wings, and they have a high pressing side. They're not just going to try and sit back and rest on it. They will try and be in the face of their opposition. Any strengths that you've pointed out about Luton?
Well, I think the nice thing about pressing triggers, at least a side based around pressing triggers, is that they have to set traps. And I think this is probably what we feel Rob Edwards' side is going to be unpredictable in. The thing about their tail in the championship is that they've come up with a lot of ways to create pressing traps on the flanks. And all of this is initiated by their wing backs. So from the get-go, we are not actually expecting them to play as a 3-5-2. We wouldn't expect them to sit in a 5-man defense unless the opposition is like parked in their third. At this stage, from the get-go, perhaps at home especially, we are definitely going to see the wing-backs all the way up there. Again, this is not a new concept. This is not novel. So we, at least what I'd like to see is intensity, and especially really clever triggers. The thing about pressing traps is that you have to figure out a way to win the ball back. You're not just trying to harry teams off the ball and push it into touch. You have very specific players designed to win the ball in very specific zones, and everyone else is designed to chase the ball back. So what I like about this particular Luton pressing scheme is that not only do they use their wide players to win the ball back, they use it to win fouls, and they use it to be as direct as possible. The reason the front two is so attractive in the first place, and the reason they're priced that high, so to speak, is because they just win the ball cross. It really is as straightforward as that. Will a direct approach do the job? It remains to be seen, but at least we know that everything revolves around winning the ball back and just finding their target man. So really our conversation is about debating the potential between their two forwards, I find. And that will be it. I mean, if you can find a 4 million starter in Bell, or perhaps new boy Anderson, or even Reece Burke, who I do rate really highly ever since his West Brom days, we just have to look at how they'll transition, because yes, there's no doubt that they are favourites to go back down, but at least we will see a few stars shine. Even the likes of Sheffield United or even Sunderland when they came out, right? There will be like this one player, not necessarily a talisman, but there will be this one player who will stand out, who will look like he will get 8 to 9 goals a season, and he will be within the chances. In terms of strengths, for FPL purposes, it's just about transparency. The moment we see the player that wins the ball back and puts in crosses, then that's it. Because Luton are also a side that are heavily reliant on set pieces.
I don't have any more strengths for this side. We're just going to go straight into the weaknesses here. I've already mentioned about the 3 of the starting 11 being on loan. They finished third. The newly promoted sides are usually the favourites to go down, and they are the third side that came up, therefore the most favourite to go down. You can argue as well that they are, even within Burnley and Sheffield United, the weakest of the 3 in terms of Premier League experience and having the players with Premier League experience as well. Also, we need to look at the gap within the Championship. The Championship and the Premier League have a gulf, right? There's obviously a big gap between the Championship and the Premier League. But even within the Championship, it's not ideal. So if we have a look at the Premier League season that's just finished, Southampton finished adrift at the bottom of the table, right? They finished 11 points behind safety. Luton finished 21 points behind Burnley. That is the same gap between rock bottom adrift Southampton and above 11th place Crystal Palace. That's the gap between Burnley and Luton, was the same gap. I know it's different leagues, but just to give you that idea of 21 points is as big as rock bottom adrift Southampton and 11th place Crystal Palace. And that's from 2 teams in the same division that have both come up to the Premier League. But they also finished 11 points behind Sheffield United. So this isn't just them, Burnley running clear miles ahead of everyone else, and the other teams came up pretty close, but Sheffield United were a very comfortable second place as well. And these are the 2 other promoted sides that they're going to be playing in the Premier League. There's not just a gap between the Premier League and Luton, but there's also a gap between the 2 sides that came up with Luton, which is a pretty worrying sign. We're also going to look at the Championship as well. They scored 57 goals in the Championship, which is actually upper to mid-table level within the Championship as well. So it's not like, they've come up 21 points behind Burnley, but they concede a lot of goals, but they score loads. No, they only scored 57. So I think this will arguably be the biggest ask in years for a club to stay in the Premier League that has been promoted. If we also look at the statistics, their average possession for the entire season was 45%. So they're not even dominated. Well, 45.3% if we're going to be like exact. And that's not good for a team in any division, let alone a team that has been promoted from the Championship to the Premier League. And also the pass completion is 69.1%, which is again low within the Championship itself. So we've got a team that isn't dominating possession, which is arguably a positive for them because they're not going to be dominating possession in the Premier League. If we just pop in a little strength in that one, they're used to not having the ball. They're used to being without possession and being the pressing side. So at least coming into the Premier League, Burnley are used to being the dominating side. They're used to controlling the possession. They're used to 64.6% possession, Burnley. So they're going to go to the Premier League and be on the other, the shoe's going to be on the other foot where they're going to be not used to having that possession. Whereas Luton are comfortable not having the ball. They've been promoted with only 45% of possession. But that passing accuracy of 69.1% means that when they do have possession, they're going to lose it. And now they're going to lose that possession to a higher quality of team. Therefore, the punishing aspect when they've lost the ball is going to be higher. And I did say I wanted to touch about, I talked about the money and being financially responsible. They are in the bottom 8 of the Championship for wage budget. Their average wage is under £10,000 a week, which means that their first team squad is under £400,000 a week for their entire first team squad. There are Premier League players who have a weekly wage, that is higher than the entire first team wage budget of this side. Haaland goes to play against Luton, and he gets paid more money than the entire first team of Luton. I'm not saying, of course, that money definitely equals quality, but we know in football that the better players get paid higher amounts of money. And when the fact that your first team squad gets paid less than a single individual player on the opponent's side, that's not good. I think it's going to be a huge ask for this Luton side to stay in the Premier League, because it's not like they've come up being a young, small, plucky side with these great identity of attacking football or beautiful play, or they've just got a wonderful manager with this unique tactical style or anything like that. They've come up. Possession stats aren't great, passing accuracy isn't great, the amount of goals they score isn't great, and they finish well behind the two clubs that they've actually come up with. And they're going to be the weakest in the Premier League as well, so it doesn't bode too well for the Hatters. Any weaknesses that you want to talk about?
We don't have to elaborate on how, player for player, they are considered the bottom end of the league. I am more trying to utilize their weaknesses and really see them as a fixture worth targeting, because that is what we like. That is what we really like. I think it's Brighton, right, that plays Luton game week 1. My issue with Luton is that they don't have glaring weaknesses at the back. As much as they don't score a lot of goals, they actually don't concede a lot of goals either. Like, I'm actually scrolling through their fixtures right now on my mobile device, and they have not been thrashed. Unless they concede a red card early on, they do not get thrashed. Basically signals that they are willing to lose small and they are willing to be plucky. And even their fixtures against Burnley and Sheffield United in the Championship have all ended with less than 2.5 goals a game. I think in that sense, with Luton reliant on chaos, I think that's the key component here. Can they find a player that somehow catches fire to take advantage of the chaos? And that will be what they will choose to live and die on at the moment, because that is the essential quality of set pieces that rely on big centre backs, as they showed against Sunderland in the playoffs. And that was how they did with Adebayo power really powering through the final stretch of games. That is it. And I think when you're a side that relies on chaos, you know that you're going to score very few goals, which is what we like as FPL players. And at the same time, we also know that we are just looking for that one guy who's like fox in the box, sharper than most. And this is where I find their loan signings coming in, or their key signings coming in, are going to also disrupt the flow of things a bit. Oh yes, I also have to mention that Amari Bell played in the Gold Cup for Jamaica, made it all the way through the knockout rounds playing for Jamaica, and his last game was the 13th of July. So I don't know how much preseason he will have, especially since Luton do have decent cover at the back. So I think in terms of their starting 11, it will not be as settled as we think. So that for me is the biggest glaring weakness. I just hope that Brighton take advantage of it by us owning the suitable players.
We'll go into players to look at for this Luton side. I've only got 2. I'm not even going to stretch to 3. The first one, of course, is Bell. He had the most appearances for the side, 46 starts last season. He's 4 million. Great, wonderful. Stick him on your second or third bench. The second one I'm going to go for, though, it's just because Adebayo should be the up front as well. He's only 5 million, which is very good. But for 5.5 million, if you are going to, for some reason, back one of the strikers, it's going to be Morris, because he didn't even get double digits, Adebayo, last season, but he started 42 games. But Morris got 20 goals in 44 starts, which, again, I don't want to keep picking at weaknesses, but the fact that I said they scored 57 goals and 20 of them have come from one of the two forwards, and not even double digits for his strike partner, it's not exactly great. He was the only player in the entire team that scored double digits, which means that if Morris gets injured, where are these goals going to come from as well? Just when you're looking at a side, and the key point for this video is this is a great team to target, that is not a good thing in a team guide video for the team that you're talking about. And that's all I've got. That's the only players that I would even consider. If I had to pick a third one, whoever the goalkeeper's going to be. And that's because their goal is going to get absolutely peppered. And you said that without red cards, that they don't usually get smashed. Okay, good. They lose 2-0, but the goalkeeper might pull off a couple of save points and get you some 3 or 4 pointers. And again, that's kind of like a backhanded compliment to say, oh, maybe you can choose the goalkeeper because they're going to be so bad and so dominated that he might get you some points in saves and no clean no clean sheets. They'll get a clean sheet, obviously, probably at some point, because the odds dictate that. When you're there and you're saying, okay, the goalkeeper because they're gonna get destroyed. It's worrying. If I was a Luton fan, I would just be loving life to experience the Premier League. I'm originally from Blackpool, and when they were promoted to the Premier League, it was just a wonderful time, a wonderful experience, and everyone was happy. For just one season of Premier League football was a delight. If I was Luton, I would just be feeling that as well. Any players that you want to talk about?
If you're looking at a team that rely on set pieces, usually we target the set piece targets, but here I would favor the set piece taker. 4.5 million defender Alfred Doughty is very high up on my watch list. Should Luton perform. Beyond that, really, well, conveniently, Luton also have a 4.5 million priced Pereira, just not Andreas.
No.
But beyond that, really, I do like the of Adebayo. I think he's a player that will kick on. The question is when. I think the issue with Luton is still going to be scoring goals. And the Premier League they will find is a much more polished side. If you don't take advantage of the Prem's weaknesses, they will take advantage of you first. Game state is a huge, huge factor in the Premier League. And if Luton don't collapse in the early stages, I think they'll do okay. So in that sense, I agree with your 4.5 million goalkeeper concept, especially if Macy starts ahead of Shea. Right now, there's no point recommending a Luton player unless he's a 4.0 million starter. It is not sensible to recommend a Luton player, and that's absolutely fine. I would just say put all these players on watch list. Alfred Doughty, the left wing back, as well as Adebayo, the potential fox in the box. I think there's probably one last point I want to say is that they have not replaced their right wing back, and I suspect they will try to convert a right midfielder into a right wing back to press high up. That man, after looking through the squad, lies on a relatively familiar name if you're a Man United fan, hint hint, Tahiti Chong, who spent quite a few seasons at Birmingham, and I do feel that he is one to watch as a direct placement of Cody Drummond, and I cannot wait to see because I am a big fan of Tahiti Chong myself, especially his hair.
He could be a good asset for this side, and you're right. Adebayo, he's 6'3", which is like 193 centimeters, and if they use that aerial attack, so he is. In the Fulham video, I talked about Tosin, the Fulham centre back, who could be doing more with that 6'5" frame that he's got, but Adebayo is good in the air. He does have some good solid attempts. In terms of strength, like you said, we can't sit here and recommend sort of realistically any of these players unless you're desperate for a starter under 6 million because you've got no budget left. That's literally it, and there's probably someone else you can back. In terms of the weaknesses, players ought to trap or avoid. I just said the other two out of the back three because Bell's 4 million. He plays 46 out of 48 games or whatever he's going to do. He is absolutely nailed. I can't sit here and say they're traps because trap or place to avoid implies they had some interest and we should probably avoid them. Like for example, I'm not saying Trent is a trap, but lots of people choose Trent. He's a great asset. I think he might not be. That's why I'll say, oh, maybe he's one to avoid. He's a trap. We can't pick anyone really from this side and say that they're a trap because that implies that we were going to pick any of these players anyway. But are there any players or positions or roles you want to pick out to say this is one I want to avoid or this could be a trap?
Central midfield. Just like Brentford, I think Luton will play a very direct style as Brentford did at the start of their promotion season. And their two central midfielders do get goals occasionally. So in case a central midfield bandwagon comes out of Luton, absolutely avoid because they concede a lot of yellow cards. The midfield concedes a lot of yellow cards. And without Marvelous Nakamba there, I think he's gone back to Villa now. I foresee things getting worse in central midfield. So yeah, just avoid that bandwagon, whatever happens there.
Yeah, a final rating, I just gave them like a 2 or 3 out of 10 because they've got a 4 million starting defender and they've got basically everyone under 6 million. So if there is people in that side that are absolutely nailed and you are absolutely moneyless. You need just a warm body on a pitch because you know you've spent on your money on 3 premiums. Then this is the only reason I'd look at this side. Do you give this team a rating out of 10?
Well, I'm trying to see what they're rated on the fixture ticker, and I wanted to give that number out of 10 because it'll be green, but I don't think anyone really knows what number it is. Is it a 5? Would it be a 5 or a 1? No, it'd be a 1, wouldn't it? It'd be a big
Yeah,
green 1.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, there it is. Okay, I say 1 out of 10, and I mean this in the most optimistic sense. 1 out of 10 with the big green color in the FDR.
I mean, they even blank in game week 2. So if you're going to start with any of the players, you've got a blank in the second game week, which isn't ideal.
It just means that they'll double, right? Somebody will have Luton as
there you
their
go.
second
So there's a
fixture,
positive. So that's it for the video on Luton. We all knew sort of what was going to happen, but the idea of this is to introduce the whole team, the potential lineup, and to talk about any strengths that we've found, which there are some, and to also really get into the weaknesses and not just say they're newly promoted. You know, actually, let's have a look at the reasons why with the goals they scored and the players that they've now lost that they got promoted with. Thank you for joining us for today's video. We're going from potentially one end of the table to the other because the next one is going to be Manchester City, treble champions from last year, FA Cup, Premier League, Champions League winners. We're all going to pretty much have Haaland in our side, but are there any other players that we're going to be looking at from Manchester City? And of course, discussing playstyle, strengths, weaknesses, and predicted lineups, which is one of the most difficult ones to predict in the Premier League on a week-to-week basis. But thank you for joining us today, and as always, have a good one.